Welcome to the Elements of Success podcast, where we share specific traits that break down barriers between you and success. We do this by bringing on guests so that they can share their stories of success by introducing an element that applies to their life, their business, and their goals. Today, we're joined by my co-host, Eric Johnson, and also the founder and CEO, Matt Benson of Efuse. Matt was recently, congratulations by the way, recently voted 30 under 30 in Forbes magazine, which is a phenomenal accomplishment. A little bit about Matt and I, we both come from the same mountaintop of Appalachia, so we have that. I have a little more of a southern drawl where I came across the river in Kentucky. He was still in Ohio, but nonetheless, past ancestors of ours probably argued or bickered over moonshine at one point. Matt, pleasure to have you on the show today.
I'm grateful to be here and stoked for it.
Awesome. And really what I want to look at, and Matt and I were talking a little bit yesterday and day before yesterday about, when it comes to an element of something that when you think of a conception or an idea of how you really birthed in Efuse, which Efuse is one of the fastest growing gaming applications for social media, networking for gamers in the country. I mean, the success that you have seen already has been tremendous. And that word that you came up with, and you said, I'm struggling with a couple words, but really it comes down to sacrifice. And the definition of sacrifice, I want to make sure I read this correctly, it's the act of giving up something valued for the sake of something else more worthwhile. That is a really bold word to say. When it comes to my business, every day is a sacrifice because I think there's a greater good. What made you come up with that term, and how has that applied to your business and your life so far?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, right? For me, growing up, I had sacrifice, and I'm sure the same for you and a lot of people. We saw representations of sacrifice in our lives, whether it be our parents sacrificing their time, their days to give more to their sons, their daughters, or whether that was the basketball coach that was putting in the extra hours to make sure we were ready for the game. Or that was the star student in class who was putting in the extra hours in the evening doing the homework and going above and beyond to study. It became clearer as time went on that the people that were willing to sacrifice the most were the ones who usually performed the best, but beyond that also provided the most utility and value to the people around them. And for me growing up, one of the things that I was just fascinated with is how can I take what I've been blessed with and my skills, everybody has different skills, but the skills I've been given, and make the most out of them and provide the most utility to the world. And this theme of sacrifice, especially over the last year, has really been resonating with me. And I'd like to think that willing to give up a lot and sacrifice a lot to build Efuse and to build a business. And it's something I can't stop thinking about. And it actually kind of came back to me when I was watching Michael Jordan's documentary. He goes on this big tangent basically saying, like, winning has a price, leadership has a price, and what are you willing to pay to get to that point? So it's just something I'm thinking a lot about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And a lot of times I relate my past experiences not only to, coming up and living in Kentucky and seeing those sacrifices that my parents have made. Like you said, a lot of people still make sacrifices every day down there. And I know that's big on your heart, is to give back to that area, that environment, that community. And I try to apply a lot of the sacrifices that I've learned in the military and things, because there's a lot of sacrifices there too that I think has kind of boiled over into the business world. And you and I could talk about subcomponents of sacrifice for hours, whether it's time, value, money, energy, friendships, relationships. I mean, the list could go on and on. When you're thinking about kind of these subcategories of becoming an entrepreneur to your level where you're featured in Forbes magazine, what do you think one of those components has kind of been the hardest thing to sacrifice so far for you?
It's a great question. I think time is normally the hardest, right? And one thing I want to point out about sacrifice is you've got to be, for me at least, it's got to be for somebody other than myself. Like if I'm sacrificing for me to gain, it only drives me so far. But if I'm willing to sacrifice for others, that's when it keeps me going, and that's where the drive stays, right? Beyond that, though, I think the number one thing I struggle with is just time. There's only so much time in the day. I was late today to get to the podcast, and it's like I've got to be oriented, I've got to be scheduled, and I've got to be very cognizant of the time I'm giving so I can make the most out of every second of the day. So that's the one I struggle with. I struggle with organization clearly and showing up, but I like to think when I'm here and I'm in the moment, I try to give as much as I can within that time frame.
Yeah, there's a rumor on the street that once you get into Forbes 40 under 40, right, then you start being on time to things more and procrastination, organization, all that. But granted, too, like, the gaming environment, the gaming world, I mean, it's kind of a, kind of trying to think of the word to say this, but it's more of a mood and a vibe and hey, I'm just here to hang out and play and do these sorts of things. So how hard was it to try to go from I just love playing video games to holy crap, I got to create a business now? And that does create organization and time. And how was that a hard transition for you to do something that you love to do into creating a business out of it?
Yeah, I think it's important to probably first understand how Efuse came about, right? So the backstory on that is grew up about an hour south of Columbus in Chillicothe, right? Smaller town from Appalachia. Went to school over at Ohio University, studying entrepreneurship and finance there. Again, another small town in the the heart of Appalachia, really, and learned a lot there. But as far as how Efuse came about, I grew up playing games, played all the time, and it was very much so community oriented. It was something I did after basketball games or on the weekends with friends to stay connected and build relationships, and it was just fun. Like, we just enjoyed playing. When I went to school at OU, though, had an opportunity to take an entire semester and conduct research on esports and gaming. And that was kind of the transition in my mind from it being fun to it being the business of games. So it was through that class that we developed this 180-page report that essentially became the business plan for Efuse. And at that moment, I knew and kind of saw that the industry was going at a really fast pace. It was something that I cared about and enjoyed. And it was something that I always knew I wanted to start my own business. So all the pieces sort of came together, and I said, you know what? I'm young. Let's do the shot now. Let's take the leap of faith. So I actually waited a year post-graduation, went to work at a venture capital firm up here in Columbus, and that's how I made my way up. But then eventually came back to that Efuse and that idea and said, you know what, let's do it. So jump ship August 2018 from working at that venture capital firm. Over the last year and a half, 2 years almost, we fundraised some money. We've gone on and launched the product and actually launched it January 2nd of 2020. And the growth we've seen is unreal. It's just beyond my wildest dreams, and it's been so much fun, and we've learned so much. But we're now over 400,000 people that have created accounts on Efuse. We're going to surpass $1 million in revenue within a year. Like, things are just picking up. We've got great investors, great partners from individuals like Seth Curry and Braxton Miller, who I know you just had on the podcast. It's super exciting, and we're super fortunate, and we're looking forward to what else is to come.
Yeah, really the success you've seen is phenomenal, and you've obviously given up a lot of sacrifice to do that. I think there's some pioneering that you guys are doing as well, and I want to take a second to talk a little bit about that, and it's really women in gaming, right? There isn't a lot of just women gaming events. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but Efuse has kind of pioneered that way to have gaming events dedicated just for women competitors. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's spot on. And one thing that we take a lot of pride in, and that I think is unique to gaming, is that there are tremendous opportunities for anybody and everybody, no matter who you are, your background, your ethnicity, your race, your gender. It doesn't matter. You can be at the top level in video games, and that's not so true if you were to say football, right? There's only so many Braxton Millers in the world that can go and play football and have that raw athleticism. And obviously he worked a lot too, but it's very different for me going out there and playing compared to him. On the flip end of the spectrum, you put us both on an Xbox, I have just as good of a shot. You don't need to have the physical traits that you would need. So one of the things that we think a lot about is, since you have that kind of equal playing ground, how can we create equitable opportunities across the industry? So it's not just the guys or the white males in gaming that have the opportunities, that have the big prize pools, but how do we take that and we replicate it for all these different demographics? So one of the one you're referencing is a tournament we call Women of the Arena. We started putting it on, I think, in July of this year, and it's absolutely taken off. So the last one was just sponsored by Crocs, the shoe company, but we're giving away $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 prize pools for these events We're having big name sponsors come in, and it's really cool because the way that the community's rallied around it, not just the females, the top females in the industry that are playing in it, but the way that the guys and everybody else are kind of chiming in and saying, this is so awesome. They want to be a part of it. They want to donate and they want to promote it. So it's creating those equitable opportunities that Efuse, because we are the ecosystem, we're a representation of the gaming ecosystem. We have the opportunity to create these events, these tournaments that provide access points to anybody and everybody across the industry. And Women of the Arena is just one of those examples.
Yeah, it's truly amazing to watch what you're doing and kind of blaze that path ahead and move forward with not only creating innovation in the gaming environment, but also bringing the forelight that, hey, this isn't just an opportunity for your 7 or 8, your 9-year-old playing Fortnite. This is an opportunity for everybody. And I think it really ties back to that sacrifice definition where you're sacrificing time, energy, investment to create something for someone else to have value in. And not only are you creating value in it, but you're also creating job opportunities. So the best way that I know how to describe Efuse is really it's a blend of Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn kind of all in one, to where you have a social network community, but you also have job opportunities, right? There's applications all the time that I see on the app to where people can apply, become a tester, or work for Epic Games or things like that. And it's really incredible that just 10 years ago, this concept never even existed. I was explaining earlier to someone else that the level of technology that we've seen increase has been really tremendous. Companies like Netflix and Amazon wouldn't exist under a 3G environment. That's why they mailed DVDs, and that's why they mailed textbooks, right? Because the 4G network was created, that's what really birthed two of the largest companies on the planet, was for that 4G network. So I'm excited to see what the 5G network does to the gaming industry, because I think it's going to be really tremendous over time. And you've kind of created that foundation, that application, through your sacrifice of time, education, energy, and the ability to do this. So you really are the true definition of sacrifice when it becomes an entrepreneur, and I'm glad to know you for it. So it's really incredible to see.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. And I think a couple things that come out of that too is when you think about Efuse, what are we, right? It is that combination of these different social networks, but we often describe ourselves as a LinkedIn for esports and gaming. And the core competencies we have is we help gamers connect with each other so they can play, they can network, but we also help to connect them to those opportunities. So the jobs, the tournaments, the team openings. And again, I think what's really important to note is no matter who you are in the industry is on fire. It is going incredibly fast. It's blowing up. COVID helped that in a really weird way. There's not many industries I think can say that, but it helped gaming get to a point that is absolutely unheard of. And because of that, more and more opportunities are being created, and more people are going to have the opportunity to take their passion and turn it into a profession in the industry. So we're really excited about that. We're really grateful to even be a part of that, and to be able to be the one one of the ones that's providing these equitable opportunities is something that we take a lot of pride in.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. Let me ask you, if you're talking into the the ear of a 10, 11, 12-year-old who's, doing a little streaming, maybe he's on Twitch and he's got an Efuse account, or maybe it's an adult, maybe it's someone that they just lost their job and their passion is streaming Call of Duty or streaming Fortnite or whatever the case may be. Knowing how you got to where you are in your successes and making those sacrifices along the way, if you had someone that's almost there, willing to take that leap of faith, but they've kind of got this reserve of, I don't know, I might put myself out there and get rejected, what would you tell them to encourage them?
I think just keep pushing, right? And I think it's two things. One is there's the educational aspect of it. Like, parents need to understand, specifically in gaming, that it's a real opportunity. Like, there's real jobs, there's real scholarships. If growing up, even for me, my parents were like, get off the PlayStation, get off the Xbox, get outside. And we still need to get outside, right? Like, you still have to have that physical exercise. But the reality is this is now becoming very similar to what you would say to your son or daughter that want to go play football, basketball, soccer at the next level. If you want to be the best of the best, and there are opportunities for you in the collegiate level, the pro level, and you can grind it out to get to that point. But more broadly, with just sacrifice in general, as a parent, you've got to be willing to let them fail. And as a student or somebody growing up, you've got to be willing to fail and feel the pain. Sacrifice doesn't come with just all highs. There's a lot of highs and lows, and you've got to be willing to go through that process and ride the waves of success, ride the waves of failure, feel the pains of sacrifice, and ultimately that sacrifice pays off in moments that you may not even see. So let the son, let the daughter go do their thing, let them fail. Don't always protect them. And if you're that person that wants to go to the next level, realize you got to pay your dues. And when you pay your dues, you're ultimately going to have opportunities for success.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, that's excellent. If you're thinking about Efuse and knowing where you guys are now, in 5-10 years from now, what do you think in your mind to say, you know what, we have really changed the industry? Is it AP collegiate sports? Is it what in your mind? What do you think is that goal where you're like, man, we have really changed the scope of gaming, and you had an impact of that? What in your mind? What is that?
I think there's a couple factors, right? The things that I love are when people who have like, for example, it happened to me the first time a couple months ago, and I was flying out to LA. I was wearing my Efuse jacket, and obviously the logo's on it. And I had somebody stop me in the airport. It's like, "Oh, you have an Efuse account?" Like, not even knowing who I was. And it was just one of those cool moments where it's like, okay, we're building a brand. So it's things like that where it's word of mouth where I've never even talked to the person. They've experienced the brand without me ever saying anything to them, and they recognize it. That's really cool. Another one is I really think in the industry when there's an opportunity for aspiring gamers to step up against one another and say, hey, you don't have an Efuse account? Like, that's kind of weird. Like, if you want to be in the industry, you have to have an Efuse account. It's kind of like business world now. Like, if you have a LinkedIn, if you don't have a LinkedIn, it's kind of like, what are you doing? Like, that's the new resume. We want the same thing for gaming. So it's the word of mouth. It's the kind of accountability and the almost the professionalism that is required to have an Efuse account. We want people to feel that. And then beyond that, I think the most important thing, and really this is where I attribute a lot of our success and a lot of our team has the same mindset, I'd say all of them, is you have to have impact as the North Star. It can't just be, let me make a lot of money, let me get a lot of people on the site. If that's the North Star, you're not going to win. For us, it's always been, how do we create as many opportunities as possible? The day we launched, before we had any users, we donated, of our investments, which was, we did 1.4 in the initial round of investment million and 1.4 million. We donated 200 grand of that right off the bat to give away opportunities, scholarships, and just provide access points. And that's scary as a startup. That's a lot of money. But what it did is it created this tremendous goodwill within the community. We saw the stories of Pablo, who is a student who came from Venezuela all the way up to the States and ultimately we've got a full ride scholarship to go play at UCI in California to play Rocket League. And it's stories like that that get told along the way that we had a small hand in contributing towards, but we just kind of, it's the notion of reaching down and helping pull others up. He was willing to sacrifice, work his butt off, and he just didn't get the equitable opportunity to take the next leap. It's things like that when we're able to provide impactful opportunities like that, that's when we know we've won.
That's incredible. I mean, it truly is a testament of really sacrifice and entrepreneur mindset to create something. I always, fall back on the idea of the greatest reason to invent a business is always to change the world. That is by far the greatest reason. And it's a testament to already so far you are starting to do that on individual levels, and you're going to do it on a complete industry level. And it's so cool to watch. So I want to, thank you for spending time with us and just being a part of sharing your story. I can't wait to someday watch you on a NASDAQ floor or something to where you're going to be sharing that same story, like a Zuckerberg story where I was in the airport, someone noticed my logo, and I thought that was the coolest thing since sliced bread, right? I mean, it's really neat to see that development start to happen already, and the impacts that you're making because of the sacrifices that you've made all along the way at such a young age is great to have that vision. So thank you for being on. We greatly appreciate it. as always.
Thanks for having me. This was incredible, and what you guys are doing and helping really shine a light into just the learnings of all of us, right? Like, we all have different stories. We've all got different mentors and leaders in our life that have shared these things. So everything I'm sharing today, I've learned from people like yourself, and being able to just share that outwardly is an honor. So I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Eric, did you have any final thoughts, questions for Matt while we've got him before he gallivants all over the country?
Yeah, since we got him in the hot seat, I got an easy question for you. Nothing industry secret or anything like that. Matt, when it's time to unplug, when it's time to relax, you've had a hard day of work, what's your go-to game, my man?
That's a hard one. I've been playing a lot of Rocket League here recently. Rocket League's the game. So if you don't know Rocket League, it's essentially soccer with cars, and it's been taken off, and I really enjoy that.
That's fantastic. All right. Well, thank you for entertaining me as well as the entire audience. Johnny, of course, thank you for bringing him on the show. This has been fantastic. And of course, our last thank you goes to you, the listening audience. Thank you for tuning in and listening to the Elements of Success podcast with Johnny Dawson. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Johnny comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thanks for listening today. For everyone at the Elements of Success, this is Eric Johnson asking you this. In the words of James Allen, there can be no progress, no achievement without sacrifice. What are you willing to sacrifice to achieve that next level of success? Think about that, and we'll talk to you soon.